Hello, and welcome to today's Happy Hour virtual tour. I am Brenda Holt with the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to more than 100 million Americans 50 plus and their families. We focus on health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulated publications, the AARP Magazine and the AARP Bulletin. During the months of August and September, we will raise awareness among adults age 50 plus for a critical link between sleep and brain health. Despite knowing the benefits of improved sleep, many older adults risk taking steps to address their sleep issues. AARP encourages people to prioritize their brain health by improving sleep habits for better sleep quality. AARP's resources, including Brain Health Resource Center and Staying Sharp, help consumers to build sleep habits for better brain health. Visit us at www.aarp.com/sleep for tips, tools, and resources. Thank you again for joining us, and now I'll turn it over to Marshall.
Folks, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Hello and good evening. I want to welcome you to Arizona History Happy Hour. I'm so happy you can join us tonight. Oh my gosh, we've got such a fun night for you planned. So let's talk a little bit about, let's see. Some of you are out there watching on YouTube. Maybe you're watching it after the fact. You can watch it live. You can watch it on Hip Historian on YouTube. So you can see prior episodes. So indeed, my name is Marshall Shore, and I'm so happy that you are joining us tonight. Now, let's talk a little about today is September 19th. And so, it's kind of interesting when you look at today. So back in 1927, they were just getting ready for Leo the Lion to do a kind of cross-country flight from San Diego to New York. And everything was all well and good until the plane that was holding Leo and his specially glass and steel cage crash landed up near the Mogollon Rim. So basically the pilot was able to escape, and some random cowboys found the wreckage and were able to find a lion wandering in the countryside of Arizona. Oh my gosh, can you imagine what that would be like? Not just a mountain lion, but a full MGM, Maine lion, roaring, probably unhappy. So also, I should have actually really opened the show with ahoy, mateys, because, today is Talk Like a Pirate Day. Arrgh! So it is also the Pawpaw Day. Now, pawpaw is a native to North America fruit that's kind of a cross between a mango and banana. Have you had one before? Did you like it? Would you have it again? These are all pondering questions, as well as asking that question because today is International Listening Day, which just promotes the fact that we should sit and listen to each other. So there's lots to be learned by just that active listening, as well as Butterscotch Pudding Day. One of my favorites when it's really well made, whether it's Jell-O or whether it's scratch. This I was recently at F&B for my birthday, and so had some butterscotch pudding that is quite tasty. Now, basically, the ingredients are brown sugar, butter, and cream. And so some folks throw a little bit of molasses, some other things in there, but It's pretty darn good. What can you expect from tonight? Well, we're going to have a little bit of trivia going on. We've got some music history, as well as a small town right here in Arizona, as well as an amazing special guest, probably someplace that you might have driven by lots of times and just wondered, what is that? You're going to find out a lot about that one building. Well, actually, that whole campus of buildings. So as I said, my name is Marshall Shore. I am your host. I also am the hip historian. And so that means I get to play with Arizona history. And, season, you can tell it's cooling down because season is hitting. There's all kinds of fun going on. Why, this weekend, we are doing a tour of Carver High School down in South Phoenix. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I think at this moment it is all booked up. So hopefully we'll be able to get another one coming soon. As well as Saturday night, we are launching our brand new history haunted tours. So we've kind of changed the route a little bit because of construction and things like that. So we're throwing in some of my favorite buildings in downtown. And so we've also been busy digging up some new stories as well. And then next week on Friday, we are doing Banned Book Week. We are doing banned book readings. We have, probably about 8-9 readers. And it's going to be lots of fun, lots of surprises. And so that's going to be at the Alwyn House. They have been doing arts and supporting creativity for over 50 years. So happy to be there with Kim and Dana doing just that. As well as then next Saturday, I'm going to be with Aunt Rita's as the MC for Night is the Red, their annual gala. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. And then October is hitting. And so, oh my gosh, we're going to have so much fun in October. So I'm going to be up in Kingman for the Route 66 Fest. So I'm going to be the MC for that. That's going to be a lot of fun with all the car shows and all the fun stuff they've got going on up there. And next week, I'm so excited because I get to go up to Lowell Observatory. They are getting ready to, in November, opening up an astronomy center. And so I get to go on a hard hat tour of that. So I'm looking forward to that. As well as the fair is starting in just a few days. And I'm happy to say we are going to be doing bingo on Friday, October 18th. Now, it is during the day, but it's going to be so much fun to be at the fair and doing some bingo. I mean, the weather is going to be amazing for the fair, so looking forward to that. Now, I always love to hear from you, so please reach out, whether you do it on Facebook, which is Marshall Shore, Hip Historian, Instagram, hip_historian. You can throw me an email, hello@hiphistorian, or even throw me a note through my website, which is hiphistorian.com. And that's where you can find out about the tours and other things that we have coming up. And so you can also sign up for my newsletter, where I, not just what I'm doing, but I think some other cool things kind of going on around. And so get ready for some fun. All right. Well, it would not be happy hour without a beverage. And PJ took today and just and ran with it. And so get ready for PJ's cocktail.
Welcome to Melinda's Alley. My name is PJ Vader Barron, and this week on the Arizona History Happy Hour, we're celebrating the Irish Cultural Center here in downtown Phoenix. I wanted to do a cool cocktail celebrating one of my favorite stories from Irish American history. This is called the Wrong Way Corrigan. Now, Doug Corrigan wanted to fly from New York to Dublin, and they told him, no, you can't. So he filed a flight path to go from New York to California and went to Dublin anyway. So when he got there, he told them, oh, I must have gone the wrong way. So they call him Wrong Way Corrigan. So we're going to do a version of Manhattan, kind of paying homage to where he left from. And so the Manhattan is usually going to be 212, right? It's the area code for Manhattan and the recipe. 2 ounces of whiskey, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and 2 dashes of bitters. We're going to mix it up a little bit today, and we're going to use an Irish whiskey. This is Jameson Black Barrel, which is Jameson Irish whiskey re-rested in charred bourbon barrels. So we're going to do 2 ounces of that. Rather than a sweet vermouth, we're going to go the wrong way and use just a little bit of dry vermouth. I'm going to do 1 ounce right here. There's also a style of cocktail called the Black Manhattan, and that's using an Amaro instead of vermouth. We're going to use just a little bit of this Brucato Amaro Orchards. I'm going to go 1/4 of an ounce right in there. Beautiful. That's from Southern California. And then we're going to use the Angostura aromatic bitters as well as the Reagan's orange bitters from New Orleans. I'm going to stir this up just to mix, chill, and dilute our Wrong Way Corrigan Manhattan Martini. Got this martini glass with the kind of woo wrong way curve to it. There we go. Beautiful. And a nice little garnish of some cherries and a little orange that I made into a shamrock. Thanks and cheers, or should I say sláinte.
I love how PJ just kept on going with the story of Wrong Way with that cocktail, and it is oh so tasty. So, all right. Well, now it's time for Little Arizona. And so that's a chance where we get to talk about a little town right here in Arizona. And so we are going to talk about Crown King, which is up in Yavapai County, has a population of about 133 people, was founded back in 1888. And, it started off as just mining camps, and it started creating so much mineral and ore that they then decided it was Crown King Mine. And so they just shortened that to Crown King, and it became a town. Now, they were producing so much ore, having to haul it down through all those mountains that you see right there on burros. That got really time consuming, and it took a lot of burros to haul everything around. And so they said, too bad somebody can't build a railroad. And, that's exactly what Frank Murphy did, was he indeed built a railroad. Now, it was 28 miles from Mayer to Crown King, and it was pretty much uphill the entire way. It was 13 miles to the very top, so that meant a very steep grade. And for every 2 miles of track, or every 2 miles to go, it took 7 miles of track because they had to do all those switchbacks. And then in the 20s, they abandoned the train. And by the late 30s, cars were using what had been that railroad bed. So when you look at where Crown King is off the 17, it almost takes the amount of time from Phoenix to the exit for Crown King as it does from that exit to actually Crown King, because you're going through all those switchbacks, and it's beautiful terrain. If you ever get a chance, go visit. And if you're there, you can go visit the saloon. Now, originally the saloon was actually in the next town over, but the owner of the shop was also working in the Crown King mine, and he didn't want to shop in the neighborhood next door. So he tore it down and reassembled it in Crown King, piece by piece. Now, it is the oldest saloon in Arizona. It's been open and operating for 110 years. And you can still get food. They do live music. They do beverages, all kinds of beverages. There are stories about how that top floor at one point used to be a brothel. Not unusual for a small little town in Arizona with all those miners. Now, also, if you get a chance to go to Crown King, I had to kind of scout around and poke around because I wanted to go visit the Crown King Cemetery, which I don't think they really want people to get to, because they gave me a map that got me part of the way there, and then I had to just go exploring. I think they're worried about people doing damage to the cemetery because there are still some wooden headstones out there in very bad shape. So if you do go there, please don't leave anything. Bring out what you bring in, and don't mess anything up. And also don't take anything, because you don't want that bad mojo in your day. Now, one of the things I love about Crown King is they do a lot of festivals. Coming up early October, they are doing their Apple Festival, which is so much fun. They've been doing that now for 18 years. This is the 18th annual Apple Festival. And there'll be hay rides, apple picking, apple cider, all that good stuff. And it'll be nice and chilly. So a cup of hot cider with maybe a little bit of rum to make the night go smooth, or just apple cider, maybe with some cinnamon in it. All right. Well, now is a time where you actually get to hear from someone else other than just me. You might have guessed that we are exploring a little bit of the Irish heritage of Arizona with my next guest. I am so happy to be bringing on my friend Chaz. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
Oh, I'm hanging in there.
So I'm so excited because, so many people drive down Central and they see this big rock building off to the side and wonder, what is it?
Well, that's the castle on Central.
Indeed it is. And it's the Irish Cultural Center and McClelland Library. And so we are going to talk a little bit about that building, some of the history and some of the contents of it, and some of the things that you can do in that building. And we're going to do it all through trivia. Now, Anita, I know you heard the word Jameson, so put down the Jameson, pick up your notebook so you can keep track of your trivia score. And now some folks will keep track of their trivia in the chat. Some will keep it on a notebook. Whatever you want to do, it's all good. Just enjoy. That is what we want you to do, is have fun with history. All right. So question number 1. Irish Cultural Center, the McClelland Library, opened the same year as what? A, Senator O'Connor United States Courthouse opens. B, Comerica Theater opens in Phoenix. C, the Arizona Roller Derby headquarters moves to Phoenix. Or D, Phil Gordon becomes the mayor of Phoenix. So one of those happened the same year that the Irish Cultural Center opened. What year? What do you think the event was? All right. On to the next question, number 2. Why is there an Irish Cultural Center in the desert? How many claim Irish ancestry right here in Arizona, someplace so different than where their family came from? So do you think that that is A, 25%, B, 10%, C, 5%, or A, 2%? All right. Well, we're moving on to question 3. How did so many Irish come to be in Arizona? Was it A, for employment with the railroads, timber companies, and mining? Or was it B, a ride with adventurers of the late 1700s? C, sick of the rain in Ireland? So that makes sense because we don't get a lot of rain here. Or did they just want to grow different crops? All right. So while you are selecting your final answer there, we're going to move on. Why is the library at the Irish Cultural Center called the McClelland Library? Is it A, Shamrock Food and Dairy, B, rallies, C, Clover Food and Drink, D, patio furniture? So which company do you think is named for the McClelland Library? All right. What is the distinctive library modeled after? Is it A, a 12th century Norman castle? B, I just realized I'm like on A. We'll just say B, a medieval church. C, a Hohokam castle. Or D, a mini golf castle at Green Gables?
I think your typewriter was stuck there.
I know. Well, the operator may have been having too much of those wrong way Corrigan cocktails.
That's right.
That may have been more the issue. All right. What is the bluish archway over the library door made of? Is it A, tons of Irish blue limestone? B, it's faux finished concrete. C, it's a miniature mural by Francis Bacon. Or D, the stone was quarried in Bisbee at an Irish mine. So one of those is what that doorway over the library is. All right. How many books does the library have? Is it A, approximately 12,000 books? Oh, same. B, just under 10,000. C, just over 5,000. Or D, 4,201. So how many books do you think the library has? All right. What is the oldest item in the library? Is it A, a 1600s government records book, a copy of Ulysses from 1930, a book of maps from the 1700s, or D, a digital copy of something I'm not even going to try and butcher and say? But it's a really old book. We'll assume that. All right. We have helped hundreds of folks find their roots. A couple of classic Arizona names. Any idea who that could have been? Was it A, John McCain, B, Wallace and Ladmo, C, Alice Cooper, or D, Sandra Day O'Connor? All right. So while you are looking at that, we're going to go to the last question, which is, what holiday do many people not realize has Irish roots? Is it A, Halloween, B, St. Patrick's Day, C, Christmas, or D, all of the above? Now, I know at least one of those. All right. Well, you are all locking in your final answers. We are going to jump over to a little bit of Arizona music. Now, Chaz, you mentioned that you were a musician as well, so you might know these folks.
Of course. There they are. Yeah. They're considered a Ceilidh band. They also are a session band, so they host one or more of the sessions locally in Phoenix, and they're playing traditional instruments. And when we say a session or a Ceilidh band, they play for the Irish dances that we have once a month down at the Irish Cultural Center. And it's considered traditional Irish music, which is usually perceived as a traditional folk music of Ireland. And you see that Shannon there is holding the harp, and we have several string instruments, an Irish drum there in the front and the center, which isn't that easy to see, called a bodhrán. And in the back, we have a fiddler and a whistle player. And on the right, we have another string player. And it's typically considered dance music and played at very popular sessions that they have several locations in Phoenix. And we have a session down at the Irish Center the first Fridays.
Oh, nice. Very good. So people out on first Fridays, they can swing by and get a little Irish music in their night.
Right.
Very cool. All right. Well, now we have some answers coming up. So the Irish Cultural Center and McClelland Library opened the same year as what? Comerica Theater opens up in Phoenix, and that was 2002.
And you see the groundbreaking there. That would have been for the very first building that we had in 2002. So that is actually the year that we had the first building on site there. And of course, we're located down at Hance Park, which is the park above the freeway that runs through downtown Phoenix, where you also have the Phoenix Public Library and several other cultural institutions. But the roots of the center really go back much earlier than that. In fact, we'll talk a little bit later about the people that moved into Arizona and who they were and what times they came. But the Irish traditions have been upheld wherever the Irish people go and through their family gathering. If you have 2 or 3 Irish settlers anywhere, you're going to end up having a party, and you're going to have Irish food, beer, dance, music, and you're going to have a party. And eventually, when you have enough people, you'll have a St. Patrick's Day parade. And so that was happening in Arizona for many, many decades before this became a reality. But I think the one major event that really made it happen was this huge bond election that the city of Phoenix had in 1988. And at the time, I'm sorry I don't have the figure here, but it was the largest bond election that had ever been floated and passed by any city in the country. And it funded expansions of it funded the Hance Park and the public library, airport expansion, the zoo, the botanical garden, just in the mountain preserve, just an incredible number of cultural and park related building projects. And the funny story here is that there was a city council member named Howard Adams, whose roots and family goes back to Northern Ireland and Belfast. And he was reviewing the plans for the bond election, and there was Hance Park, and then underneath there was a library, the public library, and then there was the Japanese garden. So he said, "Hey, where's the Irish Cultural Center?" And everybody kind of went, what? We didn't know there was one. Well, there wasn't one. It was just a figment of some people's imaginations. But he managed to put, I forget what it was, $50,000, $500,000 into the bond election because there was a Japanese garden in there. And so then many years went by, and the Japanese garden and the Irish Cultural Center were at the very bottom of the totem pole because it wasn't over $1 million. And when they got around to like having the rest of the money to spend, some people brought up the fact, and I guess it was Ken Clark, who worked for the Parks Department, kind of got a hold of a couple local businessmen, most notably Bill O'Brien, who is, Arizona's Irish cowboy, who was a notorious character who's now passed away. And Bill invited everybody he knew that had anything to do with Irish dance, music, bars, businesses, and locked everybody in the room and said, nobody's leaving till we get a $50,000 commitment to have an Irish Cultural Center in Phoenix. So that came about way back in 96, 97, just in time to not lose the money. And then things really got going. There was an Irish Leadership Council. And then later on, some plans went to the city. And then there was a nonprofit organization formed. And that's notable because this is the 25th anniversary of our nonprofit group, which is the Irish Cultural Learning Foundation. And that was 1999. So then just 3 years later, they are able to get the first building built, which was our Great Hall. And that's the large building on the campus where we have something going on every day and night of the year, it seems like. And a wonderful place for weddings, too. All right, I'll be quiet.
Oh, no, you won't.
Any Irish person, you have to tell them to watch out.
All right. Why is there an Irish Cultural Center in the middle of the desert? The arid, dry, hot desert. How many folks claim Irish ancestry in Arizona?
Well, some people go, for such a small island, how can that be 10%? But in Arizona, and we had people really study this 10, 15 years ago when we were forming the center and the library with the 2010 census. And they, were interested to find out, 10% of Arizona claims. Now, the interesting thing about the census is that you're claiming your identity. And of course, that's a sticky widget, but that's what the demographic people use. And the Irish government uses that. So it's, a rough estimate of people that claim they're of Irish descent. And if you add in people that would come from Northern Ireland, which technically might be considered part of England because of the political situation in Ireland, well, then it's up to 12%, Scots Irish in Northern Ireland. So we know that, and we've known that for 10 years. Now, the last census that was done differently, where you had to self-identify. And of course, they brought in a category, I think, last time where it's mixed race. And so I do have a T-shirt on here. I don't know if I can show it to you. But it's our family.
Actually, let me do this so we can actually see it. Oh, yeah.
It's the family tree. Okay, so you'll see the family tree has several green shamrocks in there, and it says there's green in my family tree. And so we have kind of a funny thing. We say, well, there's some Irish person that snuck into everybody's family tree at some point or another? Well, the point is really is that, ethnicity and race is a sticky widget, and it's something where you may identify as Irish, and you may be Irish American for 3, 4, 6, 8 generations going back in this country, but you still self-identify as Irish. Are you the same as somebody who just immigrated here and is of Irish descent? Well, that's interesting, but I think people do claim those, ethnic, ethnicities, and they celebrate and keep their cultures alive. So really, like, why is there a Culver, American, African American museum in Phoenix? Why is there the Japanese garden down at the park? Why is there the Plotkin Jewish Community Center, the Chinese Center, etc.? Why is there a Greek festival, an Asian festival? And it's because I think wherever people have immigrated to, they will keep their culture alive. And I will say that we have to really, give homage to the native people that were here originally before everybody immigrated into Arizona, because typically we start to say, well, the people that have immigrated here are the major ethnic groups. But when it comes down to it, the Native American peoples that were here originally really are an important part of that history as well. So
indeed, and the whole reason why we're here. I mean, because when they got here, they found those canals they had made. So
right. And I think that, and we also have a really peculiar thing with the Irish, that everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day, which really is St. Patrick's Week, or what we call March Madness. And people kind of go bonkers, and everybody's Irish wearing green beads. But then again, everybody's Mexican during Cinco de Mayo too. So it's like, okay, so who is Irish? Everybody has a Murphy surname? Well, not necessarily. But I think for all practical purposes, it is a major ethnic group, mostly because the Irish over the years and the centuries have been forced to immigrate for many reasons. A lot of it was for cultural suppression and imperialism, with England managing Ireland, and also for poverty and for more opportunity. So the Irish have immigrated all over the world. And there's a funny thing where if you go almost anywhere in the world, you'll find an Irish bar, even way at the top up by, up in the Himalayas, you'll find an Irish bar up there. And it's because the Irish have gone everywhere, and the Irish government and lots of people will say, well, Ireland's greatest export all these years is not Guinness, and it's not, the butter and all that, but it's its people. And so that's one thing that has really led to the Irish being, having such a large population abroad.
Indeed. All right. So how did so many Irish come to be in Arizona? So how did they get here?
Well, the choices were, they were sick of the rain. I kind of like that one the best of all. They heard, hey, there's this dry land over in somewhere where it's not going to rain all the time. But, I think you have to look back at the history of Arizona, and I'm no historian. I think you have to talk to Marshall Trimble or Janice Bryson, or the people that have really, researched this over the years. But what you ended up with really was when the Spanish first started coming into up through Mexico and looking for the riches and heading up to California, you had the Spanish expeditions and explorers coming in here, starting in the 1500s, the late 1500s, 1583, 1598. You had explorers, missionaries coming in, going into the early 1600s. Father Kino was a very famous one, 1690s, who actually worked with the Native Americans in this vicinity quite a bit. And so you had the Spanish coming in, the Spanish army coming in and trying to map out the Spanish territories. But the first person, there may have been some Irish in with the Spanish explorers, missionaries, but the first one that we know of that we have a really good idea came into Ireland was a person named Hugo O'Connor, who was descended from the O'Connors, which was a major Gaelic Irish family. And after one of the rebellions, a lot of the Irish were fleeing abroad to serve in other countries, and especially Spain, France, and Italy, a few other Catholic countries that welcomed the Irish. And he was in the Spanish army and was deployed to Cuba and then to Mexico, and rose up the ranks to become a captain. And he actually was charged with the reorganization of some of the presidios along the northern border from California to Texas. So he was kind of in charge of the whole operation to secure the northern end of the Spanish Empire. And at that point in time, there was a lot of opposition from the Native American groups that were here. But he did have the distinction of setting up the Presidio in Tucson, which was basically setting up a fort and then the supply area. But they also had a mission there. And, and it's funny because there's a statue of Hugo O'Connor down in Tucson, and he's considered the founder of Tucson, which of course is problematic because, there was Indian tribe villages here originally that really, should be considered in that. But I guess he maybe built the first European style buildings in Arizona in the fort down there. And then later on, the Presidio was combined with the village of San Augustine down there. And that became the northernmost border of the Spanish Empire at that point in time. So that was the first person we had. And then later after that, you had, soon after that, you had all the turmoil between the Mexican army and the U.S. Army and the Mexican-American War. And after that settled down, and then the United States then took over a large portion of Mexico. And with the Gadsden Purchase, and I don't remember exactly, 1850s, I don't know. I'm not a
somewhere
historian.
around in there. I mean, I'm not that good with dates, so
when you got the rest of Arizona as part of the United States, then kind of like all hell broke loose. You start getting the stagecoaches, the mail, the Pony Express, the railroads, and then you started getting, the onslaught of new immigrants into the state. But basically, the adventurers, the missionaries, the late 1700s, early 1800s, some of the adventurers, the trappers that came through and were kind of the go-between between, the U.S. Army and some of the Native American tribes that were here. Well, anyway, I'll be quiet. I think you need to go talk to the real historians because it's fascinating.
Well, and I didn't realize that the Irish were here that early, which I think is really cool.
Oh, I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right. So what business name did the McClelland Library?
Okay, so you may have seen there's McClelland Library over the library part of the Irish Cultural Center, which has been around now we just had a 10-year anniversary last year, but it actually opened in 2012. And that is named after the McClelland family, who were two Irish immigrants who came from Northern Ireland and County Down into Tucson in the 1920s. And having grown up on a dairy farm in Ireland, they started a dairy farm in the desert, and they built an adobe house, and that location now is in the city of Tucson. And they started delivering milk to the neighbors, being industrious immigrants. And so they called it Shamrock Foods. Two of the other family members came to start the business. And the two children of William and Winifred McClelland was Norman McClelland and his sister Frances, who both grew up in Tucson. They both went to the U of A. And Norman became the CEO of the company and moved an operation up to Phoenix in the 1950s, got involved with pasteurization and built the big plant that's along I-17, that old Shamrock Dairy sign. And then it just grew and grew and grew to where it's one of the largest, if not the largest, privately held company in Arizona. And Norman, his sister Frances stayed in Tucson and was a real philanthropist, and they were both really involved with the Presbyterian Church here in Arizona. But Norman had two major loves that he really wanted to give back to the community. among all the other things he started, which was St. Mary's Food Bank, the Mountain Preserve in Arizona, and funding amazing amount of charities in Arizona. He wanted to build, something at the Irish Cultural Center to give us some facilities that didn't exist before. The original buildings we had down there were the Great Hall, where we could do dance lessons, weddings, and have conferences, meetings. And then we had a little cottage, which is a little historical cottage of a building you might see in the west of Ireland. But he really, and the other founders, really wanted to have a library that could also serve as an archive and several other things that I'll mention in a second. But it really was his wanting to give back to the community. And his two real loves were Irish literature. And, he was from Northern Ireland, so he really liked some of the Northern Ireland, but he also loved W.B. Yeats, C.S. Lewis, Irish literature, and he wanted people, most of all, to be able to know who they are, where they came from, what their family history is. And so he wanted to fund a library where you could learn about Irish culture and learn the language, but also do your genealogy and family history. So I'll talk about that in a minute too.
Okay. So what is that distinctive library modeled after?
Well, I always tell people that come in that it's a Hohokam castle built by the people that built the canals. Well, and some people believe me, but actually what it is, it's actually two kind of distinctive buildings. There's one square tower that is closer to Central, and that would be a 12th century Norman castle. It would just be a square castle like you see all over England and Ireland, and that would have been during the Norman invasion starting in the 1200s, that far back. But then the other part of the library really would look more like a church or somebody's residence who was well off. And it has some features that would look like a residence. So it's actually several different things.
Very cool and very distinctive.
Yeah.
All right. And so what is that bluish archway over the library door made of?
So that really is unique. And when you get up close, and I encourage everybody who's listening to come down and take a tour and get a good look at it, that is Irish blue limestone. That really comes from a special part of the west of Ireland in County Galway. And it was mined there, and it was, in the old days, the stonemasons would have used tools to kind of chip away at it. And when you can see, there's actually 5 separate arches in there, and each one of them has a different chisel pattern. And it really is fairly just incredible. And it's 9 tons is what it weighed.
Wow.
It was a very distinctive kind of limestone that you would get in the west of Ireland. So that was really unique. And the person that they contracted to do it was somebody who's become well known as somebody who restores old stone buildings and monuments. He actually did the Irish Famine Memorial, which is very popular and famous in New York City and Battery Park. And he also has worked on Trinity College in Dublin, and I can't know countless number of buildings, just repairing and restoring old stonework. And his name is Frank McCormick, and he's got a business that's in County Clare. And so he chiseled all that. Now, these days, they get to use computers and CAD/CAM and tools, electronic tools to do it. But it still looks exactly like it would have been. And so that is actually based on a 12th century church that the architect Paul Ahern looked at in an island off of County Clare in the west of Ireland. And a lot of those archways are still standing today, even though the rest of the church may be in shambles or just a pile of rocks. A lot of those arches still exist today. Now, the funny story about that is that it was late getting here, and they were anxious to get the building open, and it was delayed. And this is probably going to be a tall Irish tale, but my remembrance of it is that it was stuck But you have to know the people that started the Irish Center. Bill O'Brien was a real storyteller and a jokester. So whether this is true or not, I don't know. But supposedly it was stuck in the Panama Canal because either it was too heavy or they were worried that they were shipping guns in it. And so they wanted to find out if it was actually gun running or not. Well, of course, all that stuff had stopped 15 years ago before that with the Good Friday Agreement. But there was all sorts of stories about that. But when it got here, it was the middle of summer. And so the two stonemasons that came from Ireland had a really thick brogue from the west of Ireland. I could barely understand what they were saying. And they were working with two Hispanic stonemasons here who only spoke Spanish. And so they're out there in 110-degree weather just dying of the heat. And so we had all these misters and we had, swamp coolers trying to keep them cool. And they got here, and because of the expansion of the rock, the door didn't fit. But they eventually got it all sorted out. And it's just an incredible architectural wonder. That blue limestone runs throughout the building. So you'll see it in the floors, in the entryways, and you'll see it on the windowsills. And then we have a beautiful stone fireplace on the second floor. And so that really is something special. People are really kind of awed by that when they come into the building.
I know the color is just so kind of shocking.
Yeah. It's going to get darker as it gets older, but right now that's...
Oh, wow. Okay. So how many books does the library have?
Well, the interesting thing about the library is there wasn't a lot of footprint left on the space that we had down here. And I'm always amazed that they built what they did in a small amount of space. So they had a limited amount of square footage, but they did have enough for 10,000 books. We got our first 5,000 from Boston College, which has an amazing library. The consultant for the library, Bob O'Neill, was the librarian at Boston College. And he was able to send us an amazing collection, especially strong in history and the political history of Ireland. And then we got another 5,000 items through some purchases, but lots of other donors from individuals. And we have lots of different collections. So I urge you to come down and take a look. We do have a kids section, which is really neat. We have books that are just children's books or they're bilingual books. And we have a story time once a month. That's fantastic. And so we have had a number of donors giving us, and we have a really great fiction collection. And so as we grow, we also have an Arizona history collection too, because our Irish in Arizona is a major project of the Irish Center to track the immigration to the Western United States. And the interesting thing too, is that Phoenix Public Library has probably 7 or 8 nonprofit groups that are in their catalog. And the Heard Museum is one, the Phoenix Art Museum, the Carver Library, the local hospital, Children's Library. And we're in Phoenix Public Library. So you can search the catalog and find out what we have over at the Irish Center. And if you're an ICC member, you can check out the books.
Very cool. So what is the oldest item in the library?
Well, that's an interesting question we get asked by people. It's like, well, how old is this stuff? Well, the stuff we got from from Boston College was primarily from the 1800s. But then occasionally you'd find something that was from the 1700s. But then we discovered something from, I think it might have been 1690. And it is that Parliament, if you look at it, the Parliament report on forfeitures. Now, forfeitures was a big thing because after the Cromwell invasion and Irish lands were being confiscated from Catholics and then given to Protestant settlers, all this was kept track of. And, I suppose for reparations to be made someday, but this went to Parliament and the Irish Parliament, has kept track of it. So this is a great example of the great genealogy materials that we have. We were lucky to get the private library of the #1 genealogist in Northern Ireland in Belfast, whose name was Dr. Brian Traynor. And he was originally a history professor at Queen's College in Belfast. And he went on to start, actually Northern Ireland became a separate country from England back in 1922 when they partitioned Ireland. But throughout his career, he started to build a public records office in Northern Ireland because all the records previous to that belonged to the British government. So he started the public records office and became the director of it in Belfast. And that's an incredible undertaking. And he also worked with the Ulster. Ulster is the name of the province in Northern Ireland, the old province that would have been before it was called Northern Ireland. So the Ulster Historical Foundation, and he worked with that. And they now have a brand new public records office right next to the Titanic Museum. And he, at the time, he was the director, was the highest ranking Catholic in the government in Northern Ireland during the Troubles that were happening from the 60s through the 90s. So he gave us his personal library, and it's just incredible. Norman McClelland got to know him when he was doing his family histories because his family was from Northern Ireland. So he sent us materials because he figured nobody's going to have that stuff in the United States. So we have a lot of material that doesn't exist anywhere else in this country or outside of Ireland that was given to us by this incredible man. And so that's an example of what we've got down there. And I always like to say, a lot of people, when they're researching their family history, well, if you're Scots-Irish, you have to go back to Appalachia, to where your ancestors first came, because you can't go back to Ireland to find out where they came from. You have to do a couple hundred years worth of research in this country. Someday, the McClelland Library, with its archive and these materials, is going to be the go-to place for a lot of families that moved to Arizona and made Arizona their home for a long time. So the people that founded it really were incredibly visionary.
Wow. All right. So I know you've helped hundreds of folks find their roots we were talking about.
Well, we have
those famous ones.
Well, those are two of the famous ones, but I tell you never know. It's one of those things like the pawn shop. You never know who's going to walk through the front door. Well, John McCain used to be a regular because he was a friend of Norman McClelland, and he usually would pop in right around re-election time. But other than that, he was a character. He would come down and tell stories and jokes. And we actually helped him with his family tree. And his Scots-Irish folks were traced back to Georgia and the South and Appalachia. And so he was very happy about that. And then we also had Sandra Day O'Connor come in several different times. We had an exhibit up of Sandra Day O'Connor's life. And of course, she married John O'Connor, but she was adopted as Irish herself. So she came down, and it's a funny story. That picture right there has Norman McClelland in it. And she walks in and she immediately starts peppering us with questions. And she said, "What's the oldest book you got in this library, Norman?" And then, we couldn't even do our nice little introduction we were going to do like we do for everybody. "Welcome to the library." She interrupts us and starts acting like Judge O'Connor, like asking questions. "Norman, what's your oldest book here?" And then we had to go scurry around. And then, "Norman, what's your favorite book?" And he was kind of dumbfounded. So I quick grabbed a book of poetry from Seamus Heaney, who's the Nobel Prize winning poet from Northern Ireland, where his family is from, and one of his favorite poems, and read it to her. But she was wonderful. Her family was there. Both of those two won our Anam Cara Award, which is our annual award that we give to people that support the Irish community every year. One day, a guy comes walking in with either, I don't know, an aide or a chauffeur or something, and the chauffeur was holding an umbrella for the man. And so everybody's going, "Okay, well, who's this?" And it turns out, somebody said, "Well, he's the richest man in Arizona." And he comes walking in, and he was one of Norman's tennis buddy, and it was Bruce Halley and his wife, Diane, who founded Discount Tires. And it was one of those 115-degree days. So he comes just walking in. "Hi, we thought Norman sent us down to take a look at this." And then one day I'm filling up my car in gas at the gas station, and one of the librarians, I'm on my way down there, "You better get down here quick. The ambassador of the United States to Ireland is here." And I went, "Oh, yeah. I mean, there's all these people that walk in all the time saying, 'Hey, I'm Bono's, cousin,' and or I'm, Sinead O'Connor's friend, or I'm the president of Ireland's cousin." And it turns out he really was the U.S. ambassador to Ireland. and he was in town for a wedding for his brother who lived in Tempe. So it's been great. People are always bopping in from all continents, all over the world. People, China. We actually had an interesting group of people that came on their own that were from Mali and Timbuktu, and they were interested in what this place was. So it's a great cultural resource. It's only 10 years old. We say, well, someday people are going to say, who are the McClellans? Just like they say, who are the Herds that started the Herd Museum? It's a great resource for the city and for the region.
Indeed. All right. So what holiday do many people not realize has Irish roots?
So which one did you pick?
Well, I mean, I kind of knew St. Patrick's Day was a giveaway.
Well, why? Well, Irish roots, yeah, but what's the distinctiveness of St. Patrick's Day being around the spring equinox? And Halloween, there's an old ancient Celtic holiday. There's the whole set of Celtic holidays that have persisted over the years or evolved into other holidays. Sometimes they're Christianized, sometimes they evolve. There's a Celtic holiday called Samhain, which is All Souls Day, right around 31st of October or November 1st, and that evolved into Halloween. And then Christmas, of course, was right around the time of the winter solstice. So I'll put in a plug that we do have things coming up right around Halloween, the Haunted Castle. Of course, St. Patrick's Day is a huge event. And then we have a winter solstice every year on the December 21st solstice, and many other days. We have St. Bridget's Day in February, which is another holiday for the Irish.
Very cool. Wow. I always like to ask people how they did on the trivia, but always reminding, it doesn't matter how many you got right or wrong, but now you have some answers with stories. And that's the best part, is just being able to be like, oh, I know what that building is, and here's some of the things that you can find in there. And so when people want to go by the cultural center or the library, what are some of the events?
Well, here's a couple pictures the thing to remember is that it's open all year, and, most of the year there's something going on every day. And we have catered events. I will put in a plug that is one of the most popular places to get married. When you get the lights off at night and you're in the background of the castle, it's just incredible. On the left there, we have the Women of Bloomsday. And Bloomsday is an annual event we have close to June 12th every year during the summer, which is the date that is associated with James Joyce's Ulysses, which is considered one of the best novels of the 20th century, and also one of the most banned. So I like the fact that you had banned books before. That book was banned, and we have people dress up as if it's 1912, where the book is set in the day of 1912, and we have music and all sorts of things going on, readings from the book, music, food, drink. And the other thing I will put in a plug for is that in addition to being a great place for weddings, we do have an Irish bar, which is very, very active down there, which is open for all of our major events that we have and for catered events. On the right, we have Shamrock Foods had their 100-year anniversary at the library just a couple months ago, and that's Roxy the cow, who's their mascot, visiting the library. And on the left, you have a little puppet of James Joyce, who's sitting in the window, along with the X, which is the Arizona Historical Society Certified Museums, which we are a member of that, and we're a certified museum of the State Historical Society. And as you were saying, these little libraries and museums that you're uncovering all across the state are just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, and then over on the right is an Irish wolfhound. So what's a dog doing in the library? Well, Irish wolfhounds can come in the library, and that's a stack of books there. So we have Wolfie's Tales, and that's going to be happening in the fall, and it's story time and reading with a wolfhound. And so along with our other children's programs, that's something we're doing to promote literacy down at the library.
Very cool. And I know we talked about doing an open house at some point, but I think we're going to wait till it gets a little cooler out so people can enjoy.
Yeah,
maybe doing it on our first Friday when there's some of that music going on as well. So just make it a nice event.
That'll be great. Let's do it.
Indeed. All right. Well, we'll get working on that. So be sure to stick around. And my newsletter, we'll definitely post that as well as other stuff. So Chaz, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the history of that building, what's in it, and how people can engage with it right now, which is really cool.
Come on down. There's stuff going on all the time, especially for Haunted Castle coming up, and we'll tell you all the secrets of the castle that night.
Oh, I didn't know there were secrets of the castle.
Oh, yeah, there are.
Wow. Are there any hidden passageways?
Oh, yeah. There's a dungeon and all sorts of things. there's ghosts, there's skeletons, all sorts of things.
Oh, just in time for a spooky season.
Ooh, yeah. And always Irish music and a bar and good times at the Irish Center.
Indeed. Well, Chaz, thank you so much. So just let us, so what are the hours of the museum?
Well, right now, now that we've opened up, we're open several hours during the day, which kind of coincides with people's volunteer schedules and also when people want to drive downtown. So it's open Wednesday and Thursday from 10 to 3. And then Friday night, just think of Friday night. Friday night, it's open from 5 to 8. And a lot of times there's events going on Friday night. There's a Ceilidh, like I mentioned, an Irish Ceilidh dance once on the third Friday of the month. And then Saturdays we're open from, oh boy, I wonder if they changed it, 10 to 3. Might be 9 to 3. This changed the hours.
It's probably also not fair to ask you just as we're going from hot weather to cool weather, because everybody's hours are now changing.
Yeah, so that's our fall schedule. And then we're open the first Sunday of every month from 12 to 5. So, a few hours for people that work, and then a lot of folks like to come down and do genealogy during the day, during the week. So
Kelly chimed in at 9 to 3.
Good. 9 to 3 on Saturdays. Good.
Yes, very good. All right. Well, Chaz, thank you so much for sharing about the museum and the library and kind of the cool Irish history of Arizona.
Well, I do want to thank you for everything you've done. I know that you really make history interesting, and I really appreciate that. So keep up the good work.
Will do. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
I will. Thanks. Take care.
Bye. All right. And so we're getting ready to wind down, but we do have From the Vault tonight. And so I thought, since, I'm going to be up next week for up in Little Observatory for the kind of hard hat tour of their new astronomy center. If you're ever down at University of Arizona, they have the bicentennial moon tree, where the original tree had been basically aboard the Apollo 14 space flight. It was planted. It didn't go so well for that tree. And so the tree that's there now are seeds from that original space tree. So I just think how that's really cool that there's this tree that has connections to space. So next time you're down there, check that out. Now you'll see, this is why I say, if you're watching on Facebook, be sure and share, because we're sharing so much Arizona love. And so if you have questions, comments, maybe you have ideas for guests, who knows? I love to hear from you. So please just reach out and say, hey, here's what's going on. Our next episode, I'm so excited. We actually have my friend Leroy, who is from Flagstaff, and he is a consultant with the indigenous community and mines and other things like that. So that's going to be a fascinating show. We also I'd love to give a shout out to Chris and Cole, who did that great video, as well as PJ for keeping me lubricated and on track and aware of what's going on. Now, because we kind of did a little bit of train history, we are going to end the night with the Legend City train. If any of you remember that, it was the classic Arizona amusement park, really through the 60s, through the 80s. So it was famous for so many rides, and we are going to focus on the train.